Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to the March 16th, 2021 work session. Thank you for being here today. Got a few things to discuss, and first thing on our agenda is Senate Bill 220 and an update on in-person and virtual instruction. This time I'll turn the meeting over to Dr. Matt Lutz, our superintendent.
Well, good afternoon. So when we were preparing for this meeting, originally this just said update on virtual learning and in-person learning where we're at. And then last week, late in the week, Senate Bill 220 came along, and it allowed us to re-examine how we can serve our 612 population. But first I want to kind of just walk us through our numbers and take us through where we're at, and then I'm going to make a recommendation as to what school can look like for the rest of the year for our middle and high schools. So our virtual academy continues to hold a large number of students. We have 370 in the virtual academy. We continue to have some requests to return to in-person learning. Again, the challenge with the K-5 world is we have dedicated staff to the virtual academy. And in the school buildings, we also have dedicated staff as well. At the same time, our state continues to require us to follow class size mandates in grades K through 3. So the challenge is to keep those numbers reasonable. Grades 4 and 5 do not have class size mandates, and due to that, we still try to honor pretty much no more than 25 in a class, in maximum if possible. However, when we're trying to run a K-5 virtual academy and also in-person learning, at some of our elementaries, those numbers have gotten quite large in the 4th and 5th grade. So to keep things, remember that we did offer our parents an opportunity to return to in-person learning twice throughout the course of the year. So I want to keep that in mind as we're moving forward. In grades 6-8 at Marriott Middle School, we have 426 kids that would like to return out of a population of 600. What that means is that in cohort A and cohort B, we have 426 kids combined between A and B that attend school in person. So that's around about 67, 68% of the students in that building have chosen in person. Currituck Middle has 197 students that are between A and B that have returned in person. For Currituck Middle, that's around 65% of their students. They have about 330 students in the building. And at the J.P. Knapp Early College, they have 102 students that have chosen to return in person in cohorts A and B out of 268. So again, that's one of our smaller enrollments. So that's that's around 40%. And the Currituck County High School has 516 students out of about 980 currently enrolled. So about 50% of the students have chosen to come for in-person learning every day.
I have a question about the two high schools. I know that a lot of students are dual enrolled. So we wouldn't have the total anyway, would we? Even if they were all there that wanted to be there.
That's correct. It's,
Okay.
if they were completely dual enrolled. So at the traditional high school, you have a lot of hybrid students who are dual enrolled, but also report to the high school for AP courses. So they do show on those numbers because they do report for in-person for their AP courses.
I
for
see.
example.
Okay, but like NAP,
That is
NAP has a lot of
Go back.
students that finish up, so
That's-
to speak, with their high school
So,
requirements.
yes, so when you look at that junior, senior year, and I know I'm talking for Ms. Fallon, so I apologize, but that junior, senior, super senior year right there, you have so few students reporting back to campus because most of them are all college
Okay.
students.
And most of them are doing online anyway, aren't they?
Right, COA this semester still did almost
That's what I thought,
everything
yeah.
online with with the exception of a few hands-on lab opportunities.
So our recommendation would be to return cohorts A and B under Plan A for middle and high schools effective Monday, March the 22nd, thus providing in-person instruction 4 days per week for middle and high school students. While it would be nice to go back 5, I think it's important we honor our teachers and the work that they're putting in, that they're dual working. at the 6-12 level. They have the online students and they have the in-person staff. I think you saw by those numbers, our buildings by and large are somewhere, our highest percentage is Mayock Middle School at 68% capacity, at the high school running at 50. So we should be able to still largely maintain our social distancing guidelines as much as possible, but under Plan A, it is minimal social distancing, not 6 foot. And what that also entails is that we are now able to put 2 students per seat on the bus. And that bus has always been the problem under Plan B. The largest class at, these are probably questions, so the largest class at Mayock Middle School, there's 2 with 26 in 8th grade, and there are elective classes of 25, 26, 25, if everybody shows. If everybody that's in person shows, those are your class sizes. Now keep in mind, those are bigger classrooms, but we are allowed to have less restrictive guidelines. But that's only 5 classes out of the entire building. At the Currituck Middle School, we have 1 ELA class that has 22 students. At NAP, we have 1 with 19 and 1 with 20. And at the high school, our largest class in person would be 22. And if I recall correctly, when we went through this, no one else hit 20. So there's at the high school. So all the classes at the high school will be below 20 with the exception of 1. I believe that's a freshman English class.
Are we going to allow people to come back at the end of the third 9 weeks if we have room?
So,
Like on a case-by-case basis, so to speak?
so what we've done is we have been targeting students that we know are at risk, and we've been bringing those back. If you recall, in the K-5 virtual learning, the last time we had an update, there were over 400, but we've been bringing students back that they were struggling, not performing, and so we walked through that. We do have requests at the K-5 level to return students in, but that is a different question. So at the 6-12, so I want to separate the two. At the 6-12 level, we would have room if a student would like to return. What we need to do is we have to get our bus routes up and moving, because we have kept to 48 students on the elementary buses as well, instead of maxing them out to 72. And so what that's done is depleted our fleet of buses and our drivers. We've had to assign 2 to 4 more buses at the elementary level, which then affects the middle and the high schools. So in order to start on the 22nd, we would need to hold steady where we're at now. And I think let's get the last one, I'll come back to that. So families who chose remote instruction will remain virtual at this time. We've met with the high school principals, and they've assured us that they're going to bring as many kids back as they can, space permitting on the buses. So our transportation issue, again, comes back to haunt us. The question also has come up, if a student can drive themselves to school, well, that becomes an equity issue. And that's a word that's been talked about a lot over the past year, equitable versus equal. And so if we have a student who doesn't have the means to transport themselves to school, or we have parents working multiple jobs, they can't bring their child to school, and remember, this is the choice to go virtual. So they weren't forced to go virtual, it was a choice. And so weighing all those things, I think we have to consider all those things when we look at each individual case. Mr. Walls has been doing a nice job. He has a running list. Our principals have lists, and we're going to bring back as many kids as we can to in-person instruction that would like to come back. It's a long way to get, I think, to your answer.
So we may have children that would like to come back that can provide their own transportation, but we're not going to allow that
at this time.
Okay.
We need to sort that out, so we're trying to, again, be as fair and equitable to all of our students as possible.
And you spoke with the principals at middle and high school. They're all comfortable with implementing this on March in a week, basically?
Renee and I met with them within about a half hour of the announcement, and I could tell you how I was so pleased with their reaction and their enthusiasm. And said, we're ready to go, let's go. And there wasn't a hesitation. And because there's a lot of, this is our 5th opening this year. That's how we look at it. So we were really pleased. So I think one thing we've learned is to be responsive to the needs of where we're at, and I think they're happy to get our kids back.
I think it's a great idea to do the 4 days. I can only imagine what those middle and high school teachers are dealing with in teaching virtual and in person.
They've done a great job. They really have, and it's with very little to start with. One of the things I did want to bring, if the board does choose, when we go to our board meeting to go with this option, is that before beginning Plan A instruction, we must notify Department of Health and Human Services and describe our plan for moving to Plan A, and then we have to partner with the ABC Science Collaborative with School of Medicine at Duke. This was part of the compromise, which was nice to see our legislature and governor compromising to bring students back, that we had to participate in looking at science and data to inform decision making. And I am comfortable saying in public that we have yet to have, to our knowledge, and I checked with Virginia, a case where a student-to-student transmission occurred. Thank you. We have not had any cases that we are aware of student-to-student, and or any students that went out to quarantine as well. I spoke with several superintendents within the region and one outside the region, and they're all experiencing the same thing. We're comfortable with bringing our students back under A. We always know that we can pivot, and if we need to head back to remote, we were able to do that. We've proven that.
So basically what we're doing with that is we're allowing them to collect and analyze data. That's the only thing that we're having to.
Yes.
And it is not student-specific data. So
I'm sorry.
It is not student-specific data. So
Okay.
it is data that is looking at outbreaks or tracking cases,
Okay.
and that, because we are bringing that population of students back under Plan A who does have more transmission incidences
Okay.
than, our younger population. But it is not student-specific, so for public
It's
or
just
everybody
numbers.
knowing, their kids' personal information doesn't get shared,
Just
it's about
numbers.
tracking.
So we'll still have safety protocols in place with hand sanitizer
Yes.
and mask and.
Yes, nothing changed other than in the classrooms, you no longer have to have the 6 feet social distancing. You still can't congregate in large areas in the cafeteria. Our drop-off, our food service, all will remain the same. And if you met with Angela as well, she was comfortable, said she could make this happen as well.
Will kids eat in their classrooms, or they won't all go to the lunchroom?
No, they do not go, some classes at elementary go, I think they rotate the students in.
Right.
And I think some students at the high school go, but it's more on a rotational basis.
I heard that the CDC was exploring just a 3-foot.
Yeah,
Social
that was
distancing.
on the news this morning.
Do you do deep cleaning on Friday?
We still do the deep clean on Fridays.
Okay.
I think it's a good thing, it's 4 days a week, and then leave Friday for the deep clean and also for remote learning, just because students and the staff have gotten used to that Friday for virtual, and I think it's been a great thing for us, because when we would have a snow day or a day where we had to stay home for a hurricane, that they will be used to that, and we can have a virtual day and call it. So, that's a little bit of a positive that has come out of this, but, so I like, getting back 4 days a week and leaving Friday the way it is for the rest of the school year, so I'm all for it.
And our teachers are really utilizing that planning
Yes.
and using it to keep their head above water,
They need,
Yeah.
they need it. It's quite a challenge to do both at that 6-12 level. It really is. I do also want to point out one other thing. We believe that the intent of the law, of this law passing, was to send students, to force districts back that had not returned to in-person learning.
so
So-
many.
That was the intent. We were already back, so we're able to exercise A, but that's how we're reading the law, is that this was the intent, and that is, I believe, how the law is supposed to be interpreted, is what is the intent. There'll probably be some further clarification moving forward regarding how it's implemented.
I read that Wake County, some students went back for the first time this week,
That's
Yeah.
correct.
this week.
That's correct. And
Is that it? All right, moving right along, we have our capital outlay update and our timeline. Dr. Lutz and Mr. Matt Mullins, Director of Building and Grounds, will give us an update.
All right, I'll kick us off, and I'm going to turn it over to Matt. So we looked at we wanted to improve our process on how we determined capital outlay and how money was allocated to buildings. And to that end, Matt and I went out and we visited with each building principal, and we sat down and we defined, capital outlay is generally conceived as roofs, floors, furniture, HVAC, septic. Those are capital items. They're long lasting. Yes, they allow us to function. And so Matt put together, he gathers information for months through himself and through his outstanding maintenance group, and they bring in information. So he's gathering things along, and then he puts it together, and then he gathered that, and then we went out and presented. And then we asked the building principals, what else do you believe that you need that falls under capital outlay? One of the things that we did determine, the thing that did occur was furniture, and we're going to address Central's furniture needs this year, building off of last year, and then we'll be looking at a furniture replacement cycle in the future for our other older buildings, so that they are in need of some new furniture, and we're going to create a cycle so that we can begin replacement in those buildings. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt.
Okay. As Dr. Luke stated, my list is compiled typically starting after the meeting where you folks approved this year's capital budget. I start compiling the list for next year. My guys come to me daily, weekly, giving me things that they know need to be done, and then I find things myself throughout the year that are important and necessary. So I'll go through each school and hit the highlights, the things that are the heavy hitters for the schools, and if you have any questions, just let me know. Central Elementary, as Dr. Luke stated, we're going to give that school a little bit more money for furniture to complete what we started last year. I'll flip to the last page and say that we did most of the roof at Central Elementary School last year, and there's one section that wasn't as old, but it needs to be coated as well. I found last year that the coating process works. So we're going to coat the last portion of Central Elementary School's roof, and that one will be under warranty for 20 years. If you look at Currituck Middle School, the hot topic is number 3.
Before the central wing?
Yeah.
The west wing?
The west wing.
No, the west wing and central, we're getting that fixed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I forgot about that one because it doesn't matter. The west wing is, on our walk-arounds, always, I've noticed that it's sinking. So we can't jack it up too far, but we can shore it up and get it more stabilized and then get water away from it through changing the gutter system, and it'll be stable from now on. Had a lot of issues with it sinking and water infiltration between the foundation and the walls coming in on the floor. So, yeah,
Wow.
I'm glad you called that, Dr. Lewis. It's been a long day. All right, so yeah, that is a big issue too. So then I'll move on to Currituck Middle. The septic lift station at Currituck Middle is, 40-some years old. And with the high water we've had here lately, I've noticed water infiltration, and it's actually dumping into the tank between the main tank and the auxiliary tank. And the only way to fix that is to take and put a new one beside it and then abandon the old one. And as you see, that's a pretty monstrous job. We're going to put a tank in, use the new pumps that I installed last year, put all new piping, new valves, and abandon the old tank. And so we'll have a new lift station, but just as a note on that one, remember that system has 3 or 4 different parts, so this is just one part. So there's a possibility in the future you might see something else for Currituck Middle septic system on here, but the one that's failing now is the one we're going to address this year. When we went out and spoke with the principals, we modified the list to show in red what things have been done through special funding this year due to either fund balance money that we had or special funding from the county, so you'll see those items in red. Any questions on any of that stuff before I move forward to the next school? Currituck County High School. I had some things on the list there, and through our meeting with Ms. Scholler and Todd Parker, we discussed the track French drain, which unfortunately had to be cut because the lift station project at Currituck Middle was much larger than I expected. But that's going to be one of our priorities for next year. But we put the new track in, and after further discussion with the installer and doing some research, it would be crucial to keep the track in better shape for a longer period of time than the last one was if we added the French drain to keep water infiltration off the track and keep the Bermuda grass off the track. So that's something we do want to address in the future.
Well, when they put the new track down, they did their site plan and site work, did that not come up at that time that we needed a French drain?
We didn't have one before, so we didn't even think about the fact that we would need one until we started seeing Bermuda grass growing into the new track already. It's just something that the installer told us that a lot of places, you can spray weed killer along the edge of the track and it won't damage it. But this is one of those things that I spoke to the installer again today. He said some people have abandoned the idea of the French drain because of expense, but it will increase the longevity and save your track in the future. It never had one before. It wasn't installed on the last one, so Mr. Parker and I didn't even think about the fact that they even existed because we've never seen one that had one.
Did we have the same problems with that, with the old track, with the grass growing up in
Terrible. Yeah, it was terrible. That was part of the reason, the water standing on the track and the grass growing in the track. In hindsight, was probably why it failed sooner.
Deterioration.
Yeah, it deteriorated sooner.
I'm surprised the installer didn't recommend that.
Yeah.
Well,
Or present it as an option.
when we were looking at resurfacing the track, that's not something that the rubberized track installer does. He would recommend that we go find someone else.
Yeah,
And we were looking for how can we get a track within our budget.
right.
Were there any other options other than the French drain?
We looked at cutting the grass back about a foot and putting like a pea gravel line along there, but the weeds are going to grow across that. So it's something that we would have to put the gravel line around the track and then keep spraying it with weed killer over time. That is an option. I mean, it's just something that's,
All right.
the French drain is
But
the
that's
best.
manpower
Do we have any kind of culvert or any other, what is our current drainage there?
There is a culvert on about 10 feet away from the track. And then there's just on the main stadium side. And then there's a drain box at the eastern end of the track. This came up a week and a half ago, so the only research that I've done on it is the fact that some people have it, and this is how much it's going to cost to redo it.
Okay.
It's one of the things that came up in conversation with the high school, and it wasn't, there was not a whole lot of time to do a whole lot of detailed research on it.
Have you been able to get multiple prices, Matt?
This is
I know
the
you
only
said-
price that I've gotten on
I
this.
see.
I got one person to return my call in 7 days, so
Yeah.
I put it in there to try to get it, and we were then gonna try to find somebody that would do it for cheaper, but I got one.
So we have some time.
We have a lot of time,
To
so
bid
once I
out.
get the original company to come out,
Yeah.
we'll start looking for other companies to try to get it at a better price.
Okay.
The guy basically said 60 to 80,000. I went with the high number because I know how things go.
Yeah.
But we wouldn't go with the first price. We're gonna find somebody that does it right if we do it and try to find a better price. That's what we did with the rubberized track. We got prices anywhere from that on that track from 169,000 to 230,000.
Well,
All
we
right.
certainly need to protect that
Yes,
track.
we want to make it last
Yeah,
longer.
We
it
do.
looks so good. The other
It
day when we
does.
were up there,
Yes.
it looked really good. All right, I'm going back,
That's
I'm
fine.
skipping back. Matt, the septic tank repair and replacement, you had mentioned that there's 4 different systems
Well,
at the
go ahead.
site.
you have the lift station
Mhm.
that pumps through a force main to a siphon station,
Mhm.
and then the siphon station flows out into the drain field. The only portion that's failing
Uh-huh.
is the tank, because
Right.
somehow it looks as if, in studying it, they had a tank, the tank wasn't handling capacity well enough, they took a residential tank and mated it up to the side of the original tank and cut a baffle hole in it.
Right.
So the top is separating now, and we're getting water infiltration through the top, and we can't stop it.
All right, so what size tank is that?
That right now, I don't know, I got that number yesterday morning.
Okay.
I'll get that information for you.
And Matt, I have a question about the intercom connection to the
Yes.
whole classes. I guess that's the ag auto shop.
Yes, yeah, that's
How
been
soon will
discussed.
that be done?
As soon as we get this approved, and the money comes in
Yeah,
July
'cause
1st,
they're
I'll
not
be
here
going.
in the fire drills
Well,
or any.
yeah.
Did they have a tornado drill? or-
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're having one, or they did today,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Do
We
they,
tried to do some things a few years ago where they basically just got announcements from the middle school, and that was disrupted to the classroom, so we shut that down.
Yeah.
do they not have radios though? Don't they have radios, walkie-talkies from the high school?
They do,
So we do communicate with them?
yes.
Okay. They do.
Just need
But
to
the
know what
downside
it
to
is.
that is everything discussed between administrators they're hearing.
That's
So,
right.
Yeah,
And a lot of times they don't keep them on or turn them, you know what I mean?
yeah, they get tired of hearing the noise and turn that off too,
well,
so.
we need those intercoms then.
Yeah, and honestly, looking at, I was expecting it to be a bigger price tag
I
myself.
would too, for that
There,
distance.
luckily, we have a good, network system between the schools, so they can use the network to get the intercom to Currituck Middle, and then from Currituck Middle out through the ag building and the trailers and that.
That's a real need, I think.
Yes, definitely. Next school, Griggs, basically, one of our older schools, and I've been attacking that every year since I've been here. The biggest hitter on that one is the B wing and center wing, beyond the media center. The shingles are blowing off every time we get a heavy wind, so it's just getting, we lose 50 to 100 tabs every time we get a nor'easter, so it's just getting to where it leaks all the time. So, and that's the biggest issue there. You'll see other things. The cafeteria roof needs to be coated. The dry sprinkler system in the attic, we're doing that in phases because it's a pretty big undertaking, so we've got 3 more phases on that. Make sure I'm missing anything while I'm talking. Yes, sir?
Do you check for dampness under both wings? Because, years ago, we had to replace because of mold.
Yeah,
Both
yeah,
wings.
we're having no issues with that right now.
Okay.
And as much rain as we've had, if we
Yeah,
haven't
you would
had
think
any,
we
we
would have
certainly
some,
should
yeah.
have.
Yeah.
Is it
I know.
encapsulated underneath? No, what do we have?
Well, we have the one section, the newer section is a slab section, and the old section is foundation, and we go under there periodically, right now everything's fine.
Okay.
Do we have moisture barriers under the crawl space
Yes.
areas?
Yes. Okay, next, like I said, Griggs is being hit pretty heavily. Jarvisburg being a newer school, after, basically every year, they ask for very little, and one day they'll be the target, so it's nice that they don't need anything right now. JP Knapp, we're going to start phasing in HVAC replacement and controls replacement for the HVAC system. Starting with Building A, which is the oldest building, and we've asked for that for a couple of years now, and we're finally gonna be able to get it on here.
I've got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know for years we were told about the septic system being old. Did you put a mounting system in there?
Where?
This station, at Knapp here?
They're there are multiple septic systems here, and the one system that we've had issue with is never been a major issue other than things that get put down the drains that aren't supposed to be. Since I've been here, we've had 2 or 3 issues with things getting stuck and we jet it out and everything's okay. We did have a situation a few years back where, and I can't believe, knock on wood, it didn't happen this year with all the water that we've had, but the septic field got so wet that it couldn't take on anymore, so it backed up into the girls' restroom here, and we had to pump it out. But we do get the tanks pumped every year, and I get my guys to check this one periodically just to make sure everything's okay. Knott's Island. The biggest issue right now is the classroom wing off of the gym. Another issue where 35-year shingles don't last very long down here. So they're blowing off, and we're about every time we get a nor'easter, another 100 to 150 tabs will blow off. So we're going to get a better 35-year shingle with this architectural style that doesn't blow off like 3-tab does.
So why is that the only school that we're not replacing the mulch?
The mulch is heavily mounted over there, and because we've had less traffic on the playgrounds this year, I may not have to replace a full load of mulch at every school. I could probably share a load.
Okay.
Which, as we stated before, if I share the load, then that's money that can go somewhere else.
I know usually we always have to do that.
Yeah, when I had it on the list, he said, Matt, we don't need any, I promise you.
Yeah,
So
less
that's what we
people
did.
out there.
Yeah. And most schools are in better shape this year, so like I said, that's gonna be money that can be used somewhere else.
And washer and dryer are there?
I was gonna ask about that too, what exactly?
Well, that's to basically make all of the elementary schools the same. You know how things happen with elementary school students? We have washers and dryers at the schools to accommodate and wash the clothes for the students if there's an accident or they fall in the mud or something. So there, I think, Knott's Island is probably the only one that I haven't addressed that at so far. Matter of fact, I even put one in here the first or second year I was here.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
this was, in
Yeah,
Well, all the schools.
yeah. You just never know when you can assist a family in need with a washer and dryer. That's kind of where we are.
Yeah, that's great, I
Yeah.
just didn't know.
Yeah, that's it. That on that one, yeah. Modoc Middle, getting a few things that are necessary that we've been fighting here recently, and the paint job is my idea because it just needs some sprucing up or some paint flaking off. So basically, Modoc Middle, Modoc Elementary School, they're getting a few things that are necessary, but we're going to address as much as possible in renovations and additions in the near future.
Matt,
Yes.
the front of Moab Elementary School,
Mm-hmm.
it needs painting again. It's
You talking about the front door?
Yeah.
I'll get my summer crew to do that.
Okay,
Yeah.
because
But to be
when I
honest
went
with
in
you,
there the other day, I was like, ugh.
we're looking at, that could be being addressed with a totally different entranceway in the next year or so.
Okay,
But I'll get my
because I
summer
was
crew.
thinking,
My summer crew freshens it up about every other year.
yeah.
So. We got them, we got new school, again, Shawboro, new school. I only asked for a few little things. And then there are some district needs that need to be addressed. Any questions on those before I move on? Child nutrition, she requested some hot boxes for food at various schools, and that was the number we came up with there. And transportation, the yearly lease payment for the buses until that's paid off. And got a pretty rough maintenance van that needs to be replaced in the fleet, and we're gonna try to get on a replacement schedule to start replacing some of our county cars that are over 200,000 miles. They've served us well, but I'm trying to get a couple this year. We've sold 5 and need to sell 2 more because we're 203,000 miles. We haven't replaced those 5, so. There, of course, the last item on the list is the modular release payment from last year's modulars. That will be there for the next 5 years. And The total for everything is 1.4 million, as we typically get.
Well, after all is said and done, how much capital outlay fund balance do you think we'll have?
I haven't looked at it in a while. That's something Marissa and I will have to meet
Looked at
and
it
talk
today, and we're
about.
gonna probably come in around 121.
121?
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. And you can see we did have to cut a few things. The total cuts this year is 165,000. And then the special funding items that were in red total close to $1 million. So we've done some work this year.
Thank you, Mr. Mullins. Dr. Luce, do you have anything to add to that?
So Matt does a great job, and having traveled throughout the district with him, taking a look at the buildings and the sites and the grounds, just in a different way than classrooms. He does a phenomenal job. for the,
Absolutely.
It's the work he has to take on, and we're fortunate to have Matt on our team, and I'm glad that we've added Phil into the transportation department so that Matt can give the attention to the building and grounds and across
And get
the-
home at a reasonable hour at
And
night.
then
Save myself from a heart attack.
I was amazed that
Your
he's been
children
able to
know you
maintain.
again, right?
Yes.
For for just walking around, there were times it could almost feel overwhelming just on the middle and high school grounds alone.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you see a lot.
Right, well, thank you again.
It's job security, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, 2021, 2022 school calendars, Dr. Lutz and Ms. Renee Downey.
Okay. We've been looking at multiple options. The state has yet to provide clear guidance regarding calendar for the upcoming school year. We're waiting on summer school options for K-12 that would potentially affect the calendar. To that end, we wanted to bring a couple of options forward to the board, and then also we're going to share with our staff and with the public as well to get some input. So I'm going to turn it over to Renee.
Sure, so it's that time of year again, where we're building and adopting school calendars, and we have drug our feet this year a little bit, because as you know, in the past, we built calendars and then turned around the following meeting and amended calendars, and then followed around again the next meeting and amended them one more time. So we kind of intentionally drug our feet this year just because we expect that that's gonna happen again. And so it hasn't happened yet. Last year it was May 18th that the state sent out guidance and said we're going to change things up on you. So Dr. Lutz and I have no hesitation to expect that that won't happen again this year. However, we need to go ahead and get something out for families to take a look at, for our staff to take a look at, and get some feedback on for calendar purposes. So what you have before you are some draft versions of the calendar. At this point, they've not even been shared with our principals yet, so we will do that this week. And then next week, probably get these out for our public to be able to provide feedback on, and our staff to provide feedback on moving forward. I think it's important to note that last year, the amendment to our calendar gave us the flexibility to start school a week earlier. And in doing so, allowed us to really push to have that first semester, especially for high school students, finish before Christmas break, which if our student board members had any say in that and what that's like, and I'm sure our teachers, Mr. Welliver, who's here reporting for us, to talk about what that means for a high school student in particular, may share some expertise in just the difference that makes for a high school student or a high school teacher. But if the state does not grant that flexibility, it makes it very difficult and unequitable to balance semesters before Christmas break with a 1 week start difference. It seems kind of crazy to think 1 week makes that difference, but 1 week can really make that difference. In addition to the 5 remote instructional days, you remember last year the state said in addition to starting on the 17th of August, every LEA must include 5 remote instructional days built into their calendar. And so we had to do that for this calendar, which pretty much turned out to a moot point for every LEA across the state because we were all virtual for much of the first semester anyway. But we do, again, expect that there's going to be some guidance coming out that's going to tell us that either they will make us start August 16th next year or wait and make us start the Monday closest to that August 23rd date, which for next year would be on the 23rd. The Monday closest to, August 27th. So we've drafted 2 different versions of calendars that do just that, have those start dates that could go either way. We did include in the calendars the 5 remote instructional days just because even if we don't have them, we're not so certain it's not a good practice for us to stay involved in because hurricanes, snow days, those types of things that could impact the loss of instructional time. We now have our hands quite wrapped around well the remote learning process. So we may keep those in our calendar. So they'll be included in there as well. But coming off a COVID year where we've lost face-to-face instructional time and done a better job with remote learning than we could have ever anticipated, but still not quite the same as being in person, we also tried to find a balance of what does that look like for our early release Fridays? So that will be something that we'll be getting some feedback on as well moving forward. Is do we look at every Friday early release for our secondary schools? Do we need to scale that back some to every other Friday and match that up K-12? Do our parents and staff feel like it would be really nice if we were all on the same school calendar? So those will be the things that we'll be soliciting some feedback on moving forward. Thank you, Ms.
Well,
Dever.
option 1 is definitely the most educationally sound option, because you don't have that 2-week forgetting curve in there,
Yeah.
you know, where the kids have to come back after Christmas and then take exams.
Not to mention, they can enjoy their Christmas because they don't have to work on
I was
assignments.
just about to say that. Like, I haven't taken exams in a long time with AP classes. You take them in May, but I just know, like, over Christmas break, it's nice not to have to study, do your last minute stuff before the grading period ends, because then it really is true of Christmas break. And I also feel like, especially for the high school students, it's a great preparation for what your schedule is going to be like in college. You know, you come home before Christmas, you end in late May. So I feel like it's a really great transition at that point to get ready for what's coming after Currituck.
And for the teachers as well, not to have a
Yeah.
ton
Yeah.
of grading
And this
done.
this
to
is
do
the
over
year to
Christmas.
do it because we're getting out early because of being out, you know, the teachers are not gonna lose any time off, so, yeah.
I just wanted to add too, just for teachers, I've also talked with some of the middle school teachers as well, but because I believe some of the classes over there have exams, and they much prefer option 1, just because going to that 2-week break, especially for middle school students, then coming back and trying to essentially cram before an exam is not working. And I think having it leading up to that is a much better option.
Sounds like it's
Talk to those legislators.
popular with everyone.
And early release Fridays are amazing. I know it's not, I don't know if it's feasible for everybody, but it is nice just to kind of, especially like during, you know, when it gets closer, you can leave school, go to the beach on a Friday when it gets warm outside. I don't know, it's just really nice.
That wasn't the purpose.
It does have planning for teachers as well. That's the main purpose. It's just nice, especially when you get in high school and you're like, the week just feels so long, and then you have those 1-hour classes on Friday, which makes a big difference compared to an hour and a half.
And I've seen lots of students that are really working their part-time job. You know, they'll work on Friday, whether they do it for extra money or they're helping their family. So,
Oh, yeah, 1,000. And I also know a lot of kids at the high school, it really helps their parents with the middle schools and elementary schools still getting out at a normal time on Fridays. The parents don't have to worry about transportation. If the child can drive, they can go pick up their younger sibling on a Friday, which I know a lot of students at the high school do. So that helps that side of things as well.
It's also great for clubs. A lot of clubs utilize that time in order to have meetings. It's kind of hard to fit all the clubs that we have during those lunches throughout the week. So having that early release on Friday gives us more time to meet and plan.
very good.
Well, I know when I was high school principal and superintendent, I talked till I was blue in the face to try to get them to allow us to start school early enough
Yeah.
so that, you know, we could have school the first semester end before Christmas break. And the thing that always came back, you know,
The
no,
beach.
we want the kids to get out later so that they have the juniors and seniors who can work at the beach,
Yeah.
you know, later on in the
Tourism.
summer.
Well, I think it's important to note that College of Alamo begins classes on August the 16th. So once again, if we go to a later start, our students start college classes before we ever see them for high school classes. And that makes it difficult to get them acclimated, to make sure that they have their textbooks that they need, all of those things. So again, you're right, Dr. Downey, the tourism business is a definite pull and holds a lot of lobbying power in the state, at the state level. But so does dual enrollment and these opportunities for our students. And so I think it's time that we start putting the effort where
Students
it
first.
makes, yeah, it makes sense for students and not necessarily always just the bottom dollar. Not that that money's not important to us because it does support a lot of what we do, but that calendar makes sense for students and for staff.
And also, I know we do have some students like myself who are dual enrolled through NCSSM in Raleigh. And it was nice this past year because the high school, my COA classes, and NCSSM all started on the same day, which was like the biggest relief ever. Because I remember last year I was like, okay, COA starts earlier, and then I have NCSSM, and then I have the high school. So just for students in all areas, it definitely is nice to have the same start date because there's no confusion about getting your materials and then having to worry about having a class that day because something starts later. So, option one.
We definitely know what the students want.
Yes, yes.
Students first.
All right, any other discussion? Any other points anybody wants to bring up? All right, well, thank you very much. I think that's it. If anybody else doesn't have anything that we need to bring up, do I have a motion that we end the work session?
So moved.
I'll second it. Work session is adjourned. Thank you very much.